lot, and he was an inspiration, and he allowed me to do things that I never had done before. As a matter of fact, my father, who owned a lumber company, hardware store, always used to say, "This is how you do it, and I'll do it." That wasn't really. He was said, "Here, do it." And so I was very fortunate to have him in my life, and he was a strong man, extremely stubborn, and that might have been one of his overwhelming traits, but it served him well. And I'm just very glad that he could be with us, and he had allowed me to share in his life. And I got to know him as more than my father-in-law. I got to know him as a friend. So that was marvelous stuff.
Miranda wants to.
This is Miranda. Miranda is Lee's granddaughter. She and my sister Jill live from LA. Miranda.
So, as she mentioned before, my grandpa lived in Big Bear. So I spent a lot of my breaks I went up to Big Bear. So I practically grew up in his mountain house, and he was the grandpa that I actually spent time with because my dad's grandpa died when I was 6. So I got to spend a lot of time with him, and I think I'm a lot stubborn like him. I think I got that from him. He was, I actually considered him a role model when I was younger because, you know, he was just that awesome grandpa who you can make jokes with and stuff, and I think I also make a lot of jokes like him. And I knew him pretty well, and he taught me how to ski. That was pretty cool because now I love to ski, and Big Bear has become one of my favorite places. And it's really sad that he's gone because it's like, I don't know, he was like the cool person in the family. And so yeah, that's really all I can say off the top of my head.
Should I go?
Sure.
Okay. Well, I'm Jillian, Lee's daughter, and I think if there's one adjective, and I've been really thinking about this because we had his diagnosis that he was very ill for the last couple of months, and thinking about how to sum up such a full life. He was 89 and a half. He would have been 90 on Christmas Eve, December 24th this year. So it's a long, full life, a lot of crazy things. But the one adjective I think that could sum him up, which I didn't put on the list that I sent to my brother a few weeks ago, is a maverick. It's kind of like they broke the mold and they made my dad, and he really kind of forged his own path. That he's of that era that we're losing very rapidly now, of what we call the greatest generation, the people who survived the first the Great Depression in 1929. We have? Good. Well, I hope Lee's reached his destination too, which I envisioned, by the way, because he was such an avid skier from early on. I envisioned that he's skiing somewhere in infinity. But anyway, he was part of the great generation that lived through the Great Depression, and really they suffered a lot of privation that, you know, no offense to my daughter or my son or any of the current generation growing up, but we don't know for what, you know, for us even, because we were the post-war baby boomers who, you know, our parents aspired to give us everything, and these people grew up in tough times and don't complain for the most part about it. And anyway, so he survived that, and then the World War, the Second World War, with all its horror, especially for the Jewish people. So really strong. These people are strong, and Lee has survived. By the way, there were 5 of his generation, 5 Hessels.
5 siblings.
5 siblings, and he was the second eldest. So I have the privilege to be, well, Brad and I shared, but she's in Los Angeles now. His older sister, who's 93 and a half, Hilda, and she was a WAC in the Women's Army Corps. So she was also, yeah, I mean, it's amazing. So she lives in assisted living out in Los Angeles. Brad and I, being the eldest of the next generation down, the grandchildren have had to kind of divide up taking care because Hilda never had any children. But anyway, Lee, up until I think like a week ago, right? Well, he passed last Saturday, so let's say 10 days ago, was calling his sister every day at the assisted living, and she's lost her short-term memory, so it was very frustrating to him because he was really with it, as Brad said, until, gosh, a couple of days before he passed. As a matter of fact, they updated his will about, 4 or 5 days before he passed, and he was making jokes. He was quite the jokester and the prankster. I've been getting emails from all my friends, thank God for the internet, because we're so spread out as a family. And Big Bear, just so that you know, is about 2.5 hours east of Los Angeles, where Miranda and my family and I live. And so we would drive out on one of the LA freeways and then up into the mountains, about 8,000 feet up. And my dad lived for the last 20 years, except this 2-year period when he's been with Brad and Madge, up in the mountains in an old-fashioned cabin in the woods. And you had to literally, there was no snowplow. When it snowed, you'd have to hike in on snowshoes, snowshoe in and out the trash, the provisions. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. To age 87, he lived there. He was not alone at the beginning. He was remarried. Our mother passed when we were in our 20s, so he did remarry a wonderful lady, but it didn't really work out, and he ended up in this cabin up there on his own, and he loved it. And Miranda, really, that was her second home, so it was
more like my first.
Yeah, well, she loved it, and he had these wolf dogs, and it was really a privilege because we live in a very urban environment. Most of us do now, and to go up there, at one time I took my kids up there, and we got snowed in, and they missed school. You know, it was pretty cool. It was pretty unique, and he just could fix anything. He really could fix anything. That's one of the sad things was as he got, really sick, he couldn't fix anymore, but he could still. I was here a month ago, and Madge and I were out. You've noticed some of the boards are new out here, and he was too weak by this time to do the work himself, but Madge and I got out here with a chop saw, and he sat on a chair, and I actually videoed some of it. He told us how to do it, and that was the great thing. He taught us, so it's passed on, which is a wonderful thing. So I do feel he's still with us. Anyway, for those of you who never met him, he was really, really unique. And it's Brad's turn. Thank you for coming, by the way.
Yeah, thanks for coming out and
yes.
This conflict range. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that all of you didn't get to know him better. He was actually, for someone who, for part of his life, was a professional salesperson. He worked in the fur business selling furs, and then he worked in the movie business selling movies. He really was kind of a shy person and not easy to get to know. Once you got to know him, he was fine, but it did take a while. So 2 years in one place is long for him. By the time he left Big Bear, he had a huge coterie of fans, and there was, I don't know how this even started, but every Thursday there was this group of women. It would range from like maybe 6 or 8 to up to 12 some Thursdays. Would come over to his house and have wine, then go for a walk. And they called it the Wine and Wine Club because they would whine about their, what they had to whine about, as well as taste the wine. They would bring like hors d'oeuvres and everything like that. And they randomly in his house. I mean, he's like a guy living alone, and in his 80s, and all these women are coming by. They would bring their dogs too. They would all go with their dogs. So I mean, he had a great, and he would call back there all the time. He was on the phone when he wasn't talking to Hilda, he was talking to somebody from Big Raleigh. So he hadn't really fully integrated into the Raleigh community. I think if he had more time, he probably would have had an opportunity to do that. But just to give you an idea of how Jill talked about stubbornness and independence, when he got here, he had gone through this situation where in January of 2012, he was living happily all on his own, and we don't know exactly what happened. There was some kind of an accident. He fell off, or he claims he was pushed off a chairlift, and hit his head, and he was knocked out. He fell at 15 feet, apparently.
He was skiing at this
He was
time.
skiing, right, he was skiing.
At 87.
And they had to airlift him up the mountain, and he had an edema, is that the right word?
Yes.
In his head, and they had to drill in to get the blood out, and he almost died, actually. He was unconscious for a while. When he came to, he was very, very weak and really not even all there. And it took a while for him to come back. But he did come back. And as part of this, of course, the state of California suspended his driver's license because you can't have guys that are, have gone through being unconscious for a week driving their cars. So we got to North Carolina, he had no license. And he was determined to fix that. And he went to the website of the North Carolina Department of Motor Vehicles and he studied that test and he bought it like for $80. He bought a test, checker, and he was taking model tests and so on and so forth for like about 2 weeks. And then he went in and he took the test. He got 95% right, got his license. He was so happy. And then about a week later, he was talking to somebody in Big Bear. He was talking about how he got his license. He said, it's really not any fun to drive. And they said, well, why not? He said, well, now I have my license. It's legal. There's no fun in that. So, and he also did the same thing. He got a carry permit here in North Carolina. He was, one of his passions was shooting. He was a very, very good competitive target shooter. He was was a hunter, but he would do target shooting, which is, for those of you who don't know, you go to a range and you basically shoot at a paper target, and it's bullseyes. That's where the target gets their emblem. So he was an ace at that. He would load his own bullets. He had a whole collection of guns, and it was timed shooting. He had a timer, and he would practice.
He taught in the Army, didn't he?
He did teach people to shoot rifles in the Army, but this was mostly pistols. He had a whole shelf full of trophies, like that, 3 or 4 times as many as we have soccer trophies there, and when we were growing up. So, anyway, he did go, and we went down to the Wake County Firearms Center, which if anyone hasn't been there and you'd like to shoot, you must go. It's really incredible. Your tax dollars are at work, so you should take advantage of it. And we took a class, and he passed the class, even though he foolishly sat in the back of the class and couldn't hear because he forgot his hearing aids. But I guess he knew it anyway, so he passed the course, and he got his carry permit as well. And I was talking to my cousin on Saturday after he had passed away, and explained to him that his passing had been pretty quick and painless, pretty painless. I mean, he had a little bit of soreness, but no real pain. He just got weaker and weaker. I guess the pancreatic cancer attacks the organs and puts toxins in, and your organs start shutting down. And so he had some discomfort. I mean, it wasn't completely a dream, but it wasn't any real sharp pain. Anyway, so Noel said, well, it's kind of thematically consistent with his death and his life. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? He said, well, he was so independent and lived life on his own terms, and he kind of went out the same way. So, so I thought that was good. Anyway, I'm glad you all came, and now it's time to eat, right? Or almost time to eat.
If you look with me on page 136. And we'll read responsibly, starting at the top of the page. There are 3 crowns our sages taught: the crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood, and the crown of royalty. But the crown of a good name excels them all.
Blessed is the person who lives with a good name and departs this world with a good name.
Of such a person did the Bible say, a good name is to be treasured above precious oil.
Wealth like health may pass away, but a good name can live on forever.
It can adorn a person throughout life. It can be bequeathed as a precious inheritance.
Conferring honor on family and friends, inspiring and challenging those who carry on.
Therefore, our ancient sages taught, the righteous need no monuments. Their good deeds are their memorials.
The earth of the grave does not cover them. The hand of time does not erase them.
The kindness they have shown, the love they have given, remain in everlasting remembrance.
Their achievements are more lasting and grand. Their devotion is an enduring legacy.
When we turn back to page 78, we rise for one last Kaddish. Page 78. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shmei Rabbah, v'yamad divra hirteh, v'yamrich malchuteh, v'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chayei k'chol beit Yisrael, v'agala u'bizman karim v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah v'varach le'olam v'olei almaya. Yitvarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh B'yit Hadar, B'yit Aleh, B'yit Halal, Shmei Kusha, Brifu. Le'ela min kol birchata, B'shirata, Tushbechata, V'nechemata, Da'amiran B'alma, V'imru. Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba min Shemaya, V'chayim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru. Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mromav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru. Amen. Again, thank you all for being here. There'll be another service tomorrow evening at 7:30. And Brad wasn't kidding. It's just one of those cultural things. When we're together, we eat. And so there's food in the other. Please.
Well, it's finally
Exactly. It's one of those human things.
When I was Catholic, we eat too.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah.
Well, it was the environment, or waiting for a couple of out of 5 kids, it was a bad deal. They only got, let's see, 5 natural grandchildren and 2, well, they're all natural. 5 were, so first they had 4 kids, and then 2 adopted, 2, 3, and 2 adopted. My younger brother now moved out of Texas. All the rest they were actually, Morris was kind of a conniver, okay? Before he acquired a estate in New York by paying off the back tax. So he left it off the writer, fairly well in the 20s and 30s. He died destitute. And he died destitute. He was a big anyway, he died destitute. And Morris paid off the tax about Whitehall with the proviso that his widow would live out her life in the house on the first floor. So anyway, he had enough land there that when my parents were married, he actually gave him an acre and a half of the house. And then when Nikki, the middle parent, was married, he gave her an acre and another acre of the house. So those 3 houses were all together. So that was, and then the oldest, Hilda, who was still alive, lived on the 3rd floor apartment after Mrs. Kaufman passed on. And there was no apartment. So there was Hilda and Nikki and Lee all waiting on the muscle parents. And then my Aunt Martha, who was a psychologist, lived in New Jersey. So they were pretty close. And then there was Alan who was way up. So those 3 kids were not, they came around in college times. Let's start moving towards the food because we need to encourage people to eat.